Welcome to the Golden Feminine podcast. This is a sacred space dedicated to expand wisdom around feminine energetics, multipotentiality, embodied leadership, love, empowerment, and sexuality. I'm your host, Inês Roqueduval. Hello, everyone who is listening to this podcast. This podcast, we have such an amazing guest and a very important topic, I think, in society nowadays, about healing, transformation, expansion, and integration, I would say. So we have a very special guest. Her name is Amanda Eftimio. I'm saying right? Good. And we are talking about psychedelic integration, how we can include these incredible natural healing plants, and just not the plants, into our daily lives for mental health, for body healing, and our personal development and expansion. So I will let her introduce herself here a bit. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. And yeah, we would love to know, here for the listeners, things about you, and tell me a bit about you and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Inish. It's so nice to be speaking with you. Hi, everyone. I am Amanda Eftimio, and I'm a psychedelic wellness advocate, an integration educator, a facilitator, and a speaker. And one of my missions in life is to help people help themselves reconnect with self, with other, and with the world around them with more integrity and purpose and joy. And a big part of what I do is I not only help to orient people on this new dawn of the psychedelic movement. It's quite a trendy topic nowadays. So a big part of the work that I do is to help educate people on this and share why it's important right now and sort of the cultural zeitgeist of the moment, why it is that we're talking about working with these substances for healing, for personal growth, and how we can integrate them better into our lives. And I have a company called Integra that works with facilitators and retreat centers and with individuals to integrate these experiences with more purpose and meaning.
Beautiful. It's so inspiring, and such an important really topic, especially you just don't talk about the healing process, but actually how to integrate it after. So I think you really do this incredible bridge between the spirituality, the healing, the therapeutic techniques, the ancient wisdom, the daily life, the mundane life, how we can bring it into practical life, into our daily routine, which it's missing. Sometimes you think, we need to go to this healing retreats, or the work is just there, but also it's in normal life, and people are, how can I bring this state, and how can I keep the frequency, the high frequency, the work I have been doing in the retreats or the programs or with the mentor into my daily life in a more autonomous way, in a more sustainable way, I would say. I think it's really the right word. And I would love to ask you, how did it come to you, and your personal experience with that? How did it come to you? Because when I met you, you were already kind of in this journey, right? And you have been really in a potent journey in many places in the world. And I would love to know, how did it come to you and your call?
Absolutely. So yes, Inez, this world of psychedelics, plant medicine, personal growth has been with me for many years. And I entered the space of working with these substances for my own mental health struggles that I had when I was in my late teens and early 20s. And I was somebody who was trying all kinds of ways to get better, but mostly through the pharmaceutical route, in the sense that I was taking antidepressants, anti-anxieties. And I realized then that I was just taking something to numb my pain, sort of put a band-aid over the problem, instead of actually looking at what was really the root cause of my suffering. Why was I feeling the way I was? And I was experimenting then with different forms of altered states. So not just psychedelics, but this is when I started to work with yoga and meditation and dance, ecstatic dance movement, breath work, all these different modalities that really brought me into another place where I could reconnect with myself. And it was as I was working with these modalities that I was introduced to plant medicines, and that opened a door for me. By no means did it make my problems go away overnight. It didn't cure my depression, but what it did was that it brought me to a bigger understanding of how I can actually help myself in a real way. And it wasn't by relying on drugs or medicines, but actually that medicine that lives within me, that personal power and resilience that I have. And that's what started this very long process of what I call integration, of making sense and making meaning of that plant medicine experience into my life. And fast forward many years, I was working sort of in a more traditional job at a tech startup. I was enjoying it, but it wasn't really bringing me a lot of purpose, because I knew that there was this part of me that really wanted to support others based on what I experienced for myself. And many years later, I actually decided to go back to university to have a more of an academic and scientific perspective of what these substances, these psychedelics, can do for us. And so I went to university and I did my master's of science in neuroscience. And that's when I was really looking at what's actually happening in the brain when we're working with these substances. And that was a really important part of my journey, but it wasn't exactly the complete picture, because I myself had experienced these in a more ceremonial way, in a way that was more transpersonal, connecting more with my spirit. And so my big goal is actually to combine these and to bridge that science and that sacred to make a more well-rounded interpretation and experience of these psychedelic substances. And so my personal journey started from a more of a personal healing. It was for personal healing. And it's evolved now through the world of neuroscience, through the business realm, because I also worked in the business side of the psychedelics industry. I was working for a company that made investments into psychedelic therapy, also in the nonprofit sector. So there's so many different ways that I've now been woven into the psychedelic space. And yeah, that's how I got here, essentially.
And it's not anymore like a big taboo, right? Because, for example, in America, I remember you were telling me you were going, just not working with these companies that work on psychedelic investment, but also you were going into a very non-profit organization events, no, to Amazon, and how these actually are kind of global events to how to create more impact in the world, right? So I would love to ask you, so in these events and in this your experience and this world that you are so integrated, which are the medicines, if you have to really speak about some medicines that you have been working with, that you find that are really bringing a meaningful and transformational experience? You can also share this experience of yours, or some medicines that you are having more experience with that you could share a bit about.
Yeah, so when we speak of these medicines, and I also I'm interested in how we use the word, right? Psychedelic medicines, right? So medicine implies that it's taking on an old construct of what we do when we want to heal, right? We want to take a medicine as well. So that's also really interesting how we're talking about these substances as such, and also in the context of their indigenous or originary origins, which is as a plant medicine, as a sort of a part of a particular indigenous culture that has worked with such to heal, but also to connect with the divine and to the cosmos. So there's so many ways we can talk about these. I will call them medicines. However, for some, it may not be that case.
Substances, yes. Yeah, because it's so interesting, because there is this difference between calling it medicine, because it's from where my experience and from where I came from, and it's so interesting that we are here bridging it from, you know, the spirituality, the mundane, and the corporate also life, and the more professional terms in different parts of the world. And it's very interesting. I have some experience with some medicines, but are substances, and well, you have really been into the neuroscience of them, and really a lot to share. And I'm so curious, because we have been speaking some that we have tried also, and yeah, your approach on those substances.
Yeah, so some of these substances or medicines, they, you know, your one of your earlier questions is around which ones, you know, to talk about more. And I would say, from the experience of the work that I do in supporting others, there is no one specific substance that has more effect as on a broader scale, because everyone's quite different. What I can speak to are the ones that are the most common, especially as we're kind of navigating this space. From also for a legal perspective, most of these substances are not legal in parts, in many places in the world. And in the United States, for example, some of these are moving through clinical trials as a treatment for specific disorders like MDMA, which wouldn't necessarily be considered a classic psychedelic medicine.
Yes.
Right? But it is being used as a treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. And we have the more plant-based ones like psilocybin, which is the compound found in what we would call magic mushrooms, for people with treatment-resistant depression. So that, from a regulatory, sort of a clinical perspective, those are the ones that are most often spoken about in research. We also have ketamine, which is not an illegal substance. It's Schedule 4 in the US, and I believe even in Portugal, it's used legally for people with depression, anxiety, when administered by a psychiatrist. So these substances, I would say these psychedelics, are quite interesting from a clinical perspective. And we also have ones that are more used in the traditional ritualistic context, such as ayahuasca, peyote. We have even 5-MeO DMT. So there are a few iboga. There are a few substances here that don't necessarily have that regulation around it from any legal point of view, with the exception of places in the world where it's used for religious and cultural reasons. And so, yeah, there's no one right substance for anyone. And I also would say that these psychedelics are not for everyone. I make sure to say that. There are people who cannot be or should not be working with them if they have a certain predisposition to certain mental disorders like psychosis, or if they have schizophrenia in the family. And that's important to check with a clinician before even working with these psychedelics, and having a really thorough assessment. And so I do feel it's my responsibility to say that as well. In terms of how we can bridge these from an integration perspective, it's interesting, because whether or not we're working with these from a clinical or a non-clinical point of view, whether we're specifically taking MDMA for our post-traumatic stress disorder, or we're doing ayahuasca to open ourselves up to what's happening in the more mystical or spiritual realm, and to have greater connectivity, regardless of whether we're doing one or the other. Integration is that shared language between both of those. Integration for us, at least for us in the West, in the global North, where we are not living in a society, in an indigenous society that lives in harmony with nature, that's already connected to these medicines. We are living in cities, we're living in places where these substances aren't part of our normal day-to-day. So for us, integration, no matter what, is so important.
you cannot do like I imagine. That's why it's for some cases and clinical perspectives, they have another medicines like MDMA or ketamine instead of like microdosing ayahuasca or peyote. No, right. I imagine that there is like a resonance even on our daily lives, and because we live in cities and it needs specific requirements of also wisdom and connection, and so I imagine that there is a difference of why some substances are more um, studied or more used and recommended for like daily life microdosing, which is something that microdosing normally is a very small quantity. Correct me if I'm wrong, of a certain substance to actually rewire our brain and have some wellness, well-being effects, right, on our daily lives.
Yeah, so for microdosing, there are two substances that are normally done so and anecdotally, but one is in particular is being studied in the research. So psilocybin is being studied for microdosing in clinical settings or in scientific settings, especially in the US and the United Kingdom. And true to what you say, perhaps why we're more attracted to something like magic mushrooms or to LSD is it's something that for us we can relate with more. And also to say on the side of microdosing of other substances like ayahuasca or mescaline, which is in peyote, that's not normally done and it isn't being studied. So if anyone's doing so, it's all just kind of anecdotally beneficial or not for them. It's also not something that traditional communities that have worked with these medicines, sacred medicines, they don't necessarily speak of doing this. They don't allow this, so to speak, within their traditions. And so if people are doing so, it's coming out of more of an appropriative or people doing so on their own free will in the global norm. In a more not recreative, but they're experimenting out of the context of their original use. So that's also not something I would personally speak to as anything to, I wouldn't promote that usage at all. However, for microdosing, that is having a lot of qualitative effect in the sense that people are finding that they're more present. They are having more creative tendencies. Now, I will say current research shows that that a microdose is no more effective than a placebo at this current stage. Now, there's limited evidence at the moment. So there's not real world studies of multiple hundreds of thousands of people microdosing. It's very much in a closed environment. So that's one limitation. And also there is such thing as, placebo is not a bad thing, right? We are feeling better about ourselves in the process. But from a scientific point of view, at the moment, microdosing has not shown it to be more than a placebo effect. That being said, I do believe that microdosing has helped people for a number of reasons. The first is that, and this also ties back to integration, what we do as a daily practice is the practice of presence and being in the present moment. And what microdosing does is it's a ritual every day where we are in presence. We are forcing ourselves to come back to exactly what we're doing and consuming. So a lot of times people accompany a microdose with a meditation or an intention setting. So there is an anchor to something that's out of our ordinary day-to-day that actually makes things more meaningful in our life. And so I feel that microdosing is part of a complete system that we have, which includes intention setting, slowing down, having a morning where we're not checking our phone right away. These small things that are helping us to maybe even change our diet or our lifestyle. People who are microdosing, for example, for a specific period of time, are not drinking. They are not consuming other kinds of substances. They're eating better. They're sleeping more. So all of this is why we're feeling better about ourselves. We're having more focus at work. It's not just one thing that creates all of this change. And that's something I really stress about these altered states and these psychedelics in general. The reason why they're so interesting for us now is that they're allowing us to look at ourselves in a different way, for us to take back our own agency, to get well, to be better, to be more motivated, to be more connected. It's just a tool. It's one of the many tools that we have. And you, Inez, I mean, your practices are also part of that tremendous array of what we can do to reconnect. It's not just psychedelics. It's not just a breathing practice. It's everything together.
Yes. That's really, really, really beautiful. I really resonate because I started my path actually through the natural psychedelic. Well, before the meditation and the yoga, then here's the natural flow. I think of the universe. I really started with the yoga, meditation, and then naturally went into natural psychedelics, which or even not natural, like the substances that actually created in a laboratory, but I have found that I have tremendous effects on my body and my altered states of consciousness. And what is altered states of consciousness that brought me, and I'm speaking also about because I have more experience in the proper higher doses than the microdoses, although I have experienced both. It really helps me to become aware of myself. And by becoming aware and by understanding where the problems are coming from, I can also have an opportunity to make peace and forgive myself. Why is this coming from? Where are my triggers? It's like all the Pandora that you are not aware of, why you are acting like this, why your behavior is acting towards someone, like why you get triggered by this. So all these questions, when you kind of open the Pandora, when you kind of open and expand your consciousness, the answers just come to you. So for me, it was very important the beginning of my process to understand, especially with my ancestrality, with my inner child, and how I could be more in peace. Why? Because I'm actually having the answers and the awareness and the consciousness. So on daily life, when I find myself, oh, I'm acting like this, wait, hold on, I can have opportunity to change. So that presence is incredibly important. And I have been, all the ones we have been talking about, I've also experienced myself. So I know it's really, really an incredible tool for the first stage, one of the first stages of healing, which I called self-awareness. Because for me, it's very important self-awareness, and then the embodiment, which is the connection with the body. And and that we can do the connection mind, body, and spirit. So I think this is a topic that really brings me a lot. Of course, there is a lot of studies that have proved that heal cancers and heal the physical body. Because the moment that you also understand and can recalibrate and redefine your emotions, you can also change at the physical level and vice versa, right? So it's really, really special what you are bringing into the world. And before we go into the next question, which is how do you actually can integrate it in a more corporate life? And because people think, oh my God, this is really I'm gonna take like mushrooms before going to like my business, like what, like yeah. So I want to really demystify that part, but before that, I would love to also ask, like, let's say if it's a person that is listening here and would ask, well, I have some problems with like my body or self-confidence, or I'm searching more to be present. How do you distinguish better like each substance for different cases, for different kind of results? Let's say like there is the microdosing or the psilocybin, and there is ketamine, MDMA, and the LSD as well. With all of them, I have very different experiences. The psilocybin really brings me to a more spiritual level, a more introspective level. The MDMA, I really found that really opens, for example, my heart a lot. So really all the issues around my heart and heartbreaks, and really expanding that center of mine, right? So it really works on that level, this really love self-love bubble of love. And I found that I had experience with LSD that really awakened my energy, which it's, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And I felt that with ketamine, I don't have that much experience at all. So yeah, I would love if you could just, for different kind of results, what would you briefly say about them for people who are listening? Because sometimes people are like, come and they're like, okay, I would love to integrate them in my daily life, where to start and which one is best and who to talk with, right? Sometimes people have this.
I'm asked often this, and it's funny because I wish there was like there's part of me, my scientific brain, that's like, okay, let's go into the research. What does the research say? And there's one answer there. And then there's also like the whole life, the world in the underground, and the people who are experimenting and working with these outside of clinical context. And they have different reasons. Even for you, you explain, you know, there is no correcting you or not, because your interpretation and experience is completely valid and everyone's is different. But you mention things that are often spoken about as results, right? Over cross section of people. So many people find a more deeper emotional and introspective connection with mushrooms. That is true. Some people may not. It also really depends on your set and setting, right? So the setting is the actual environment and context in which you're working with these substances. And oftentimes people can be taking mushrooms recreationally at a festival, for example. They're not going to have that introspective feeling, or if they do, it might be masked by the noise and the people around them, right? Or they're doing it exactly, or they're doing it one-on-one or by themselves at home. That leads to a very different result, right? Same with MDMA. People who are working with it in a clinical perspective for post-traumatic stress disorder as a one-on-one therapy, they're really going deep. They're opening their heart. They're uncovering a lot of different traumas to find complete self-love. Or people take MDMA at a party, and that's a very different kind of experience, right? So how people would enter this realm of which psychedelic to take and why and how. You know, as the person who is very much in this world, I also say I do not promote the use of substances that are illegal in any place. So make sure that what you're doing is legal in your jurisdiction and where you're located. For example, there are truffles that are legal, or rather they are not illegal to be used in the Netherlands. And there's a lot of people going there for mushroom experiences there for like therapeutic reasons, etc. So I will start with that. But what I do recommend people is that they take a look. This is part of the integration process also. They really take a look in preparation, which is what, you know, the steps that you take before working with any kind of altered state. What is it that you're already doing? What does your practice look like already? Do you have a daily practice of breathing, of meditating, of writing? Do you have a presence practice? Are you already entering that space of self-awareness that then can be amplified? That's a really important question, because a lot of people want to jump right into that peak experience. They want to go straight for the gold at the top of the mountain. And they realize that, well, I have no idea what to do with this because I'm so confused. I've never been here before. I don't know what this feels like already. So depending on what you're already doing and how and your intentions also determines the result, the actual result of that psychedelic, regardless of what that substance is. So you can be choosing between LSD and mushrooms and ayahuasca, and you have a similar intention, but based on your experience of life, your experience with altered states, and your ability to let go of control of the outcome of any of these experiences, that will determine what actually happens at the end. Because I've met people who take very high doses of substances and of medicines, and they feel very little because they're not yet ready and open to that kind of experience that's going to show them. It's a very important point.
Totally. This is really, and this is bringing to a point that I really want to mention, that if it's not used in the right way with integration, can be dissociative, right? So it's like I find in many people that they are taking this to dissociate. They are not looking for a very profound self-awareness experience. They're looking to like just go out of this body and just forget the problems and forget the world and just be out of the world for one day, and nothing really can be resolved in this way. Just an experience is and a sensation, but in the end of the day, what did it result? What kind of insights did you got? And if it's not done with a specific intention, that's why I find so important when we work with these substances, or especially if they are considering natural medicines, which is the case of psilocybin, which in coming from my experience has a spirit, would say, not really respected and then in the right way, can actually have the complete opposite effect, right?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. People who are constantly seeking something more and more to escape themselves, who are actually working with these substances as a tool to not look at their core root of what's going on inside of them, it can lead to you will not essentially, you're not actually achieving the result that you're looking for in the first place. And some people are doing it subconsciously. Some people are viewing the psychedelic experience itself as the solution, as the answer, as the actual cure to what they're looking for. And so they keep going from one ceremony to another, take one substance after another without integrating, when they don't realize that the space between, and it can be a very long space between, you could do one psychedelic experience once in your life and feel that you have enough information that you then need to go and integrate for the rest of your life. And that happens for people. Because it's what we do with this experience and the actual discipline that we have to have those embodiment practices. For example, you speak so much of coming back to the body. All of these are integration tools. We can work with them for a very long time. We never need to go back to a specific drug or medicine, or, that altered state can show us the way. And the way can look very different for many different people. But there is this escapist tendency, especially in specific circles, where, it can feel like very trendy to go and do ayahuasca and then have a bufo 5-MeO DMT and then take some mushrooms on the weekend. And it's just one after another. And they are dissociating in most cases. It's really all the more reason why integration is necessary for that grounding. Exactly.
Yeah, it's very ungrounded. And I have to speak about in my experience, there are also the famous bad trips, which I believe that happen a lot, especially with the psilocybin, when they are taking exactly in these dissociative states. I find out that psilocybin can bring us to a very, very special and profound experience of shadow work, of really understanding our shadows, but at the same time, it also opens our energy field to feel what's around us. So if we are not aware, we can have actually that experience in the middle of a festival, which can be extremely overwhelming. And it's just, you are dealing with your own shadows, you're feeling the energies of the people around, and maybe the shadows of the people, and absorbing all that energetic sense, and without an intention, without how to hold yourself. And again, I say, even the people who are doing this in a very recreational way, I always invite that you have some experience of integration, because if something goes wrong, let's say you have a bad trip in a festival, you need to have the integration tools after to actually heal, because you re-traumatized yourself.
Yes.
So if we don't have those tools, if we don't have knowing how to hold ourselves, and we try to by ourselves like experience this kind of states, it can be very traumatized, and that is called the known bad trip, because you just stay in that vortex, you don't know how to go out of there, right? So in my experience, it's very interesting, because I started, as I told you, in this path, and then I realized I have several areas of my life to work on, like with my feminine lineage, with my womb, with my digestive system, and that I went to find after lineages and teachers and that practices that actually could treat that issue that I have in my body. So it doesn't matter how much awareness I got, it was important for me to have that awareness, but the healing was through another modalities then. Yes. So it's so important to bring that embodiment and that meditation on how can we every day in our autonomy integrate all the information we received. Because if we're just receiving information but we know how to alchemize into the body, then the healing doesn't happen.
Yes. And it's all the more when you bring this up, these bad trips, it's all the more reason why integration starts with the preparation. Are you prepared to enter in a kind of state that it's unknown to you, where you might not be fully in control, where you might be reaching places where you didn't expect? And how are you going to react to that? Are you already primed to these kind of experiences with other practices where you're coming back to yourself, where you're coming back to your body, where you trust your body's intelligence, right? Where you're not stuck in some kind of mind loop that could very often come from these bad trips. It's because we haven't done that kind of preparation. And then, of course, the actual integration, like you mentioned, the modalities are going to be different for everyone, but it's about the tool to help you get to the other type of process, right? To actually do the work to see things through.
It's exactly, and that's exactly what you do now with Integra. So you basically you receive a person who has done these experiences, right? And then you help them create a program, or you create a program for them with different facilitators. It's just yourself, and you design a program for them to integrate. That's what you do, right?
Yeah, so Integra does a couple of things. So on the one side, we are an education and training platform. So I work with retreat centers and facilitators and coaches and people who are in a space holding capacity already, who want to learn how to implement an integration program for their clients, for their participants, for their journeyers. So I consult on designing different programs that suit that particular brand or that particular facilitator. For example, a retreat center in Mexico hosting psilocybin retreats can be very different from a ketamine clinic in Portugal, right? Yes. But there is a whole sort of basis of integration that can be woven in. There's different principles, and it's about bringing in the right people to support that process, whether it's clinical, whether it's ceremonial. And also, yes, Integra, part of that is my own coaching practice as an integration coach. I help people to integrate, prepare for, and integrate their experiences. And it's, yes, a lot of it is very much how the language that somebody feels comfortable, whether it's more talking as a coach would, asking the right questions, maybe it's making suggestions for other modalities. I would bring in the right professionals to help do that and do the integration that is specific to them. So it's very varied, but it is something that I do, and yeah.
I have a lot this question, especially after in the Middle East, which is a lot of corporate world, right? Is how they can integrate in a big corporate this kind of work. Like, it's very, very important, because you are doing actually that bridge, right, from the spiritual, from the corporate world. So big entrepreneur wants to bring these well-being routines in their life, and they have very, very busy life, because most of the times people don't go because they think they will take too much time, or they are too busy, or right. So how could a big company actually use these modalities and use these embodiment tools and integration into the company? How can they do? And also your experience, what it's most search, and you see that has more results or effects.
Yeah, so there's, obviously we're speaking of legal practices, right? So in no way, shape, or form do I suggest everyone in a corporate go and take mushrooms and give it to their employees. That would be very funny, but I would get into a lot of trouble for saying that. But what I fundamentally believe is that there are practices that are altered states induced, that are not with substances, that can really help people in the corporate world, starting with the leaders, the managers, the CEOs, who are looking to have a better sense of how to be better leaders, how they can really tap into their own life center and their purpose to enact and be more humane and look at the individual employee and their colleagues and their peers with the same respect that they're learning how to give themselves. And so that means weaving a lot of these integration practices into their own personal routines, and then sharing with them how they can bring that to the workplace in a real sustainable way. And that can look like a lot of different things. It could mean having an amplified wellness program for these employees, but not like here's a 1 week wellness week. Everyone for 1 week learns about meditation and then that's it. There's nothing else to be taught. It's really integrating it into the fabric of the work world. So what are the different exercises and tools to also create more trust in the relationships between colleagues? So oftentimes we really separate our world so that we cannot bring in more personal conversations and things that are happening to us in a way that can be met with respect and with understanding. So how do we actually create dialogue that's more open to change, to curiosity, to exploration? These are all principles that we might have individually when we're working with altered states, but we can work with them interpersonally as well. And then there's the final part, which is really about service. It's really about doing for others. A big part of what I believe in with psychedelics and the whole realm of integration is actually this theme of reciprocity. It's this giving and taking, this offering and receiving, how it is that we can achieve balance in harmony with ourselves and with nature, of course, by always finding ways to being of service for something outside of ourselves. We've been talking a lot about working with peak state psychedelics to help better us, the individual. But what comes a lot from these also originary indigenous traditions is this element of an offering. So by stepping into the space of an altered state or of healing oneself, what is it that we're offering another? And so I do feel that the service element, or this aspect of the balance of receiving and giving, can really be integrated into the workplace in very easy, simple ways, in terms of how it is that we show appreciation and gratitude for the people that we're working with, how the boss of the company can show more appreciation for employee and the other way around, how it is that we can incorporate more offerings into the work world. And so it's not about necessarily saying, okay, let's all do, psychedelics. It's actually, what is it that we're learning from and how do we apply it in a corporate context?
That's very, 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 very beautiful. Exactly. So it's essentially leadership, like leadership skills, how to talk, yes, how people can talk with each other, how to bring more empathy. Because in the end of the day, let's say, making a bridge of all together, if we learn how to open our hearts and expand our hearts and have more self-acceptance and compassion, we will bring this into our world, into our relationships. We have a bigger capacity of empathy, compassion, acceptance, tolerance with another being with us. So, and by being aware of our shadows and our own projections, we will less project onto others. So overall, we are contributing for a better environment in a professional life, corporate life, personal life, right? So by working ourselves, we will be able to optimize relationships inside the company. And I think where I listen from many leaders that when the environment is motivational, when there is a nice environment, the company grows. And when the environment is just, when this conflict, there is this energetic stagnancy. So sometimes companies just look at the results or the marketing or the design and what is not working, and sometimes working at the environment, working on how we position ourselves, our personality, how we actually are leading and bringing emotions into our workspace. Right?
Absolutely. Yes. And, all of this is rooted in relationships. And the root of working with substance, with medicines, with these psychedelics is about our relationships, whether to self or to others or to nature, right? So if we can redefine our relationships in the work world specifically, as we're speaking about now, and be stronger leaders and be more humane leaders to one another and show our truth and our authenticity, it'll lead to better, more improved workplace performance. If we want to see results and outcomes, it really starts with the quality of those relationships, which is stemmed from how we work with these substances and integrate them.
Wow, this is really, 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 really beautiful. I think that, wow, so many gifts in this conversation and wisdom and knowledge. And I'm really, really grateful that you are bringing all of that. And I know that you have to go, but I would love just to end with a question like, to end this conversation, which message that would love to bring into into the listeners, the people who are listening here? What's the biggest message or advice or that you would love people to take away from this conversation?
I will share that the message that I would love to share with all of you is something that I wish I had known for myself and that I needed to learn over time. And that's truly this aspect that what we seek is really within us, and that the first step to fully owning who we are and opening to that is to realize that we are that medicine, and that no matter how much we want to externalize and seek some kind of substance or drug or modality or healing tool, it all really comes within us first, and to remember that for ourselves before we start on any kind of journey.
That's really, really, really heart-touching. I really love that. Sometimes we are trying to find answers outside, in the medicines, in the substances, in the practices, in gods, by worshipping gods. And in some traditions, they do that, right? Instead of looking to ourselves and understanding that actually the answer is inside. I went through many phases of my life where I was doing course after course and teacher after teacher, trying to find answers. What I was lacking was actually being with myself and do maybe the same practice and go even deeper within myself, because the answer was inside me, not outside. So they're incredible tools and help to be more present, but it's always to upgrade the biggest asset, which is ourselves.
Yes.
It's to unlock the answers of ourselves.
Exactly, Nish. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much for being here, for accepting. And for those who are going to listen to this from all over the world, it's such a very, very important topic, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. See you. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I hope you have enjoyed, and if so, let me know how it landed to you. For now, have a gorgeous, beautiful day, and I see you on the next one.